Hello, and welcome to class. Today we are going to talk about a very important chapter in United States history. That is the United States Civil War. Specifically, we are going to speak about the causes of the United States Civil War and the things that led up to it. And we are going to try and answer the question, how did these two very important parts of our nation become so divided, the North against the South? The biggest and the most simple of answers that I can give is that of slavery. Because while there were a lot of other smaller topics that we will be able to look at, the biggest and most important one by far was that of slavery. Most of these issues that occurred would not have been nearly as big issues were it not for slavery. So, first, we are going to examine the effect of slavery in these different aspects. Those of states' rights, of economics and the market revolution, the idea of westward expansion in the continental United States, different ideologies that they had in the northern states versus the southern states, and different acts that were passed during this time, such as the Fugitive Slave Acts and other acts that were considered part of the Compromise of 1850. Okay, to get us started, we are going to talk about states' rights. Now, whenever you talk about states' rights, you need to ask a very important question. A state's right to do what? In this case, what we are talking about is a state's right to have slaves and to have slavery exist within its state. Now, there were several very important laws passed at this time that became known as the Compromise of 1850. The most prominent of these laws was a law known as the Fugitive Slave Act. Now, what the Fugitive Slave Act allowed for was that any slave, being an escaped slave, even if he crossed the line into a free state, that his owners were legally allowed to go and bring him back to their plantation or where they lived. This was a very controversial law at this time because many northerners that lived in free states saw it as unjust, and many southerners saw it as perfectly just, and it allowed for some controversy to occur and some further division to occur. Okay, now we are going to discuss economics. Economics is a very important topic when talking about slavery during this time because of inventions of things like the cotton gin and other inventions made slave owning and plantation running a very, very profitable business. Now, one thing to note with this is that most people think of the northerners as advanced, technological, forward-thinking people, and the southerners as people that were kind of stuck in their ways and backwards. However, this was not true. Many of the business practices that were actually enacted by the southerners during this time, we still use today. And they enacted very advanced business practices and were very intelligent in the way they managed their slaves and the way that they managed their finances. Okay, now we are going to briefly mention Western expansion. So as you can see by this map, the United States had been slowly expanding into the West. And this created essentially a debate for each new state that was brought into the United States on whether it would be considered a free state or a slave state. And because of this continuing debate, there were problems that created further divisions about controversy over specific states that were near a specific line. Next, we are going to talk about differing ideologies that existed in the southern states versus the northern states. And these were very crucial in how these played out. And I would like to actually read to you an excerpt from a diary of a southerner during this time. Okay, this is an excerpt of the diary of Nancy Emerson, which says, quote, "This whole agitation about slavery which has prevailed at these years is the most monstrous humbug ever got up since the flood. I am, if possible, 1,000 times better satisfied with the propriety of slavery than I was before the war. I believe this violent abolition spirit grows out of attempting to be wise above what is written, and it shows itself where it is carried out, by leading those possessed with it to throw away the Bible. It is my full belief that the infatuation which has precipitated the North into this war is a judgment from God upon them." So as you can see from that small excerpt, there were some very serious and real differences in ideology during this time that occurred between Southerners and Northerners. In the North, we also had a series of literature published. One of the most notable examples is a book titled Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was written by Harriet Beecher Stowe, which is an anti-slavery novel that depicts a story about an escaped slave and her journey to freedom. And to finalize, as you can see by this map of the southern United States at this time, the southern United States had a very high slave population in certain areas. This has been discussed before, but we will bring it up again. Many of these issues that we've discussed would not have existed, or would have been much less, had there not been slavery. And because of that, the overall cause of the Civil War was slavery. There were many other things that went into it, and many other things that affected it, but most of these factors would have been mitigated were it not for the overall cause of slavery. I would like to thank you all for watching. This has been a pleasure making this video for anybody that actually gets to see it. On this last page, as you can see, I have a few references for websites that I gathered some of my information from. One thing I'd highly like to recommend to you all is the Give Me Liberty by Eric Foner. It is a great American history textbook, and it really allows us to be able to see that history is not as black and white as many things as we make out to be. There's a lot of factors that play into what happened in history, and these are factors that we can learn from today. Thank you all for watching, and have a good day.